In this Roll for Crit digital preview, we're taking a look at Mahokenshi. I say preview because I played a beta version with only a few stages available, and I'm sure there will be more tweaks outside of the full game being released later next year. Now, this is a game heavily inspired by Japanese mythology, but is also a deck building game. You control heroes from one of 4 houses, each one based around different mechanics and having their own color and kami. You'll be going around a map. There'll be different spots where you can buy cards or just get free ones, upgrade them, or even destroy cards. So it's all about deciding how you move around the board, what's more important to you, thinning your deck, upgrading cards, getting new ones, or completing the actual objectives they have out for you. So why don't we take a look at the gameplay itself, and I can show you what this is all about. So I'm going to have this gameplay playing while I'm talking. This is a deck builder where you're also going to be moving around trying to complete an objective for whatever stage you're playing. Usually they're timed. In this case, this one actually had a 20 turns and it's game over. So you'll always have to keep in mind whatever your main objective is. However, there are side objectives. There is a reason why you may want to do a side objective versus the main one, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. The way the deck building works in this is that you will always start with a basic starting deck, and as you play throughout the level, you'll hit spots that may give you free cards, or you'll buy cards from a marketplace in order to upgrade your deck. There are 3 main kinds of cards: attack, skill, and movement. Movement usually allows you to dash, which makes it easier for you to get around the map, while skills usually just give you either defense and other attributes, pretty much support cards. And then attack, you can probably guess, is all about dealing damage. Now, in order to play these cards, you have a base of 4 energy at the start of each turn, but there are ways for you to gain more energy or raise that base cap as you're playing. There are 4 different heroes you can choose to play from. Each one shares a common pool of cards that you may come across, but they also have their own pool of cards, as each character has their own unique strategies and skills that are unique to them. For example, the character in the gameplay I'm showing has 2 keywords, Fly and Outrage. Fly is all about gaining extra movement points that you can later spend for some huge attacks, while Outrage gives you stronger powers if you've taken enough damage. There are 2 other ways to improve your deck outside of just adding cards, and that comes from the dojo and the shrine. The dojo allows you to spend money to upgrade cards, getting a stronger version of it, while the shrine does what I think should be in every deck builder, and that's card removal. Like I said, you're on a timer, so you don't really have all the time in the world to visit every single one of these places to get all the upgrades and make that perfect deck. This is not just a deck builder. You're moving around and fighting enemies. Movement will also cost that energy, so you'll have to be careful how you spend it. And there are different terrain tiles with different movement costs, as well as benefits for standing in them. So sometimes it may be worthwhile to go to a more expensive area, because usually that means you're going to get more bonuses during combat. Keep in mind that the movement cards that you have in hand often have dash, which remove the cost for you to enter a tile, making them very useful. Enemies, on the other hand, there is a large variety with different skills and strategies. There are ranged ones that will always try to keep a space away from you, some that will try to poison you, defensive ones, big scary guys, so on and so forth. Usually we'll be patrolling or standing in an area and have a sort of cone of vision, an area that if you step into, that will start the combat, and that usually means they're just going to try to hunt you down and attack you. Now you can obviously attack back, and the way combat works is depending first on the locations you're standing in will give bonuses. You will play attack cards to hurt them, some of them will have range, and then when you finish your turn, that's when they attack you back. Now, depending on the cards you play, as well as maybe just the skills of the monster or where you guys are standing, you may have defense values. You must break through any defense before you deal damage to health. While there are some cards and abilities that give temporary defense, most defense is going to be regenerated at the start of the round, meaning for both you and your opponent, you may have to continually break through defense unless you have a way around it with things like poison or possibly relocating so the enemy is in a weaker position. There are also tons of effects you can inflict on your opponents and yourself, such as poison, weakness, strength, many of the things that you'd like to see in any RPG in order to gain that tactical advantage. The final thing you're going to need to worry about while playing are trinkets and equipment. Equipment are items that you'll earn by leveling up that you can equip at the start of the round. At the beginning, you can only equip one, but as you progress, you may be able to equip more. These equipment will have strong effects that once activated will go down on cooldown for a couple of turns. The other thing to worry about are trinkets. Now, these are gained while playing. If you ever visit a castle castle. There will be someone there to offer you a trinket. These will have their own quirky little abilities, such as being able to gain health whenever you kill an enemy, or gaining some free energy every 4 turns. Now, you will not have to pay for these. However, once you gain one, you will not be able to gain another from the castle. All previous locations can be revisited in order to spend more money to purchase, upgrade, or destroy cards, unless that location in and of itself gets destroyed. You'll use all these things in order to try to complete the objectives that are available. You can complete more than one, but there's one main objective and a few side ones. The reason why you may want to complete some over the other is at the end, win or lose, if you completed an objective, if it's the first time you've completed it, you're going to get some special currency used in a skill tree. This skill tree unlocks many different abilities, such as having some upgraded cards in your starting deck, or making things cheaper, or even giving you a free upgrade when you visit the dojo. So even if you could complete the main objective, sometimes completing some of those side ones first so you have that currency to be stronger in later missions is worthwhile. That being said, you will not always be told these side missions, and some of them I feel are designed for you to return to that mission after you become a bit stronger, as it can be quite challenging sometimes to maybe defeat a hard boss before they get to move too many times. Regardless, you will be gaining XP, and every time you level up your character, it will unlock not only new items, but also maybe some new cards in their loot pool, giving you stronger cards to buy when playing. So, like I said earlier, this is in beta, and that means that it's not perfect, needs some fine tuning. That said, from what I've played so far, I've really enjoyed it. As I've said with most deck building games now, you can't just do a deck builder. It's got to have more to it, and this game definitely adds that. The moving around, taking advantage of using enemy AI that you don't have to move is quite enjoyable, so you can focus more on the deck building, while also the positioning and trying to trick your opponents and be as efficient as possible is really fun. It also seems to reward you from replaying missions even if you lose, if you completed a different objective. In order to level up, you still get some experience. So you are gonna be grinding a bit, but I guess for me, and when it comes to RPGs, that's totally fine. The cards themselves are pretty fun. There is plenty of like little comboing. For example, there is a fly card that lets you do tons of damage if you consume all the fly stacks you have. So with the character using fly, I pretty much play all the fly cards first, getting a nice big fly stack, and then being able to pretty much nuke an enemy out of existence. The same can be said with all the other characters. Personally, I played a bit more with the main red character as well as the green ninja, and the ninja plays a bunch off of poison and decoying, so less about being defensive and taking hits, and rather just trying to sort of do hits and doing hit and runs and trying to force your opponent to die slowly as you walk off in a different direction as they are preoccupied with a decoy clone. While I am more used to having cards always available to me in order to buy and upgrade, I do think there is enough going on here that I didn't feel I was being too restricted. And for the most part, it sort of made me shift sometimes to being like, all right, I haven't got a defensive card yet, I have to be a bit more careful, versus I'm getting a lot of defense cards, I'm just gonna charge in and see what happens kind of deal. And of course, it is interesting because you're usually on a timer to be like, do I have time to stop there to remove this card, or should I just book it? I'm not really sure. I think I'll keep the bulk cards, because they're really, outside of these wizards, there isn't like your flat cards that you come across too often. It's more of just your basic cards are going to be a little bit weaker, but they're still pretty good. In particular, the movement cards actually are some of the first cards I always upgrade because they become a 0 cost dash and defense. And while it's not a huge defense, to me, having free energy for a dash allows for some great repositioning without costing me any energy. So combine all these different strategies you may come across depending on what cards come up, as well as the different objectives that you may or may not be able to complete depending on how far you are. This is definitely a game that rewards you coming back and playing more. Each character, by the way, levels up on their own, so maybe you'll want to play with some of your weaker characters in order to level them up and gain stronger. But there are some things I would like to see added or changed. Well, the biggest one is an undo button. There are times when I play a card I don't mean to, and there are plenty of other card games that have something similar like this if you don't give out new information, such as drawing a card or revealing a card to your opponent, and I think this game could use one as well. There are plenty of times I misclicked on a dash and didn't know it, so that was a little bit annoying. The other thing is, playing through this really felt like a roguelike game. Now, I admit there are plenty of other digital deck builders out there, but I could feel this having a sort of endless mode in which you just see how far you can go. You keep building up your deck, just getting different cards, cards, and maybe that has its own special skill tree as well as unlockables, so it makes more sense for that kind of mode. But I think it would fit perfectly with this game. I highly recommend this game if you like deck building, and especially Mage Knight. I definitely got Mage Knight vibes from this. Just I think the idea of deck building, but also moving around a map with grids and attacking and upgrading in that sense. This game is slated to come out January next year, I believe. Of course, I'm always hesitant to say things like that because you never know when something gets delayed, but keep an eye out for it. I played this on Steam, so that's where you can look. I'll put a list down below if I find out it's releasing on other platforms, so you can buy it wherever you prefer to play your video games. But for now, that's all I have about Mahokenshi. Let me know if you decide to pick up this game when it releases next year and what your thoughts on it are. If you have a favorite character or playstyle, I'd love to hear it. But for now, thank you so much for watching. If you could do the usual, like, share, subscribe, that'd be great, and maybe sharing this with someone who you think may be interested in this video game. And thank you to all my rollers supporting me on Patreon. You are just as beautiful as the most finely crafted katana. But for now, I'm Will Keeler, and this has been a digital preview.